This is the second video in asking questions, and in this video we'll focus on asking questions during the introduce, follow-up, and close sections of the communication process. So Jason, in the last video, you did a great job explaining, asking questions in the connect and develop phase. Is there a difference in asking questions in this part of the communication process?
Yeah, because when you're doing connect and develop, you're kind of getting to know the person. First, getting to know the person on a personal level in the connect step, and the develop step, getting to know the person as it relates to developing them towards introducing the business, product, or service to them. Where you are now is they've looked at information, because you're following up with them. Follow-up always follows up some sort of presentation. We call it the introduce step, where you introduce them to something. In our case, it's our company and our product. If you're a service-orientated company, it could be your service if you're doing that. So now you're in a phase where you're starting to ask questions, trying to figure out where they are at, looking at your information. So it's really, first step is, what have they looked at? Have they looked at what you gave them? Do they need any more information? Do they not need any more information? And, are you going to be in a place where you're moving them right to close in that follow-up conversation? So asking questions is definitely a big part of this process. And I will tell you, this is where the rubber meets the road. If you can't ask questions in the follow-up and close, you're going to have a real hard time, because that's where the misconceptions come up, the objections, the questions. You have to be able to ask questions to dig them out. Even if you know how to answer those questions, if you don't know how to dig them out, there's no questions to answer. So the question really is, what's the difference between the follow-up and close in my mind? And in a lot of ways, there really isn't a whole lot of difference. The follow-up and the close really define themselves, and your contact will tell you where you're at depending on what they have done. Have they looked at the information? Do they have any more? Do you need to prepare them for the close or not? Or do they need to go back and look at more information? You may answer a lot of questions and they may stay in the follow-up, because they need to look at more stuff. You may answer some questions and they move towards close. You just don't know until they start asking closing questions. And closing questions are, well, what do we do now? What's next? Those sort of things. Until you start getting those questions, you're in the follow-up. And the way you move people towards those closing questions is asking questions and answering their questions. So there is quite a bit of difference pre and post introduce. You're shifting from more of a information gathering on the person and their experience to, okay, what do you want to know now about what you've looked at in the introduce step? And that's the difference here. And so you still need to use the same skill set, digging in, listening, asking clarifying questions. It's the same in that sense, but you're doing it for a different reason. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that as you've built the business over the last 8 to 10 years.
Oh, I got lots of thoughts about this. We could spend hours talking about this, going into minutia. You hit the key points on there for sure. And, depending on what they looked at, whether you send them to, a conference call or a web video or a DVD, or maybe if you did a, face-to-face or phone presentation, the follow-up and the questions we ask can be slightly different. But a lot of times, people will review something and then you follow up with them on the phone or in person. And the simplest question I like to ask after, see if they actually watched it or reviewed the information is, I'll just say, what did you like most about it? And that's usually my go-to question. And I'll just sit there, as we mentioned in other videos, I'll just sit there and zip my lip and wait for them to answer it. And it's, what do you like most about it? So you're assuming the positive. You're not asking for a critique, because whatever you ask for, people will give you the answer. What do you like most about it, or what didn't you like about it? Well, whatever you ask, people will answer it. We want to focus on the positive and find out what they like so we can keep going with that. And the other thing is, it's best to say, what do you like about it versus, what do you think about it? The like evokes more of the emotion side, and the word think usually invokes more of the analytical, critical side. And that's something that I've I've kept in mind over the years, and I've noticed when I say, hey, what do you like most about it? It just works really, really well.
I've got one. I'll say sometimes to people, if I'm going to talk, and I'll explain that in a second, I'll say, how did it look to you? Look. They picture something in their mind. For some reason, that invokes an emotional response as opposed to an analytical response. And why are we trying to stay away from the analytical response? Because analytical responses tend to get people caught up in the minutia and create roadblocks and bumps and stuff we want to avoid. We want them to focus on the good things. We can weed out those roadblocks later, but we're trying to do that. Now, just one little side note here. Assuming the personality type, if I have a red or a blue, I'm not going to say the first thing. When small talk is over and the follow-up and close, I'm going to let them say the first word. But as they start talking about the information, if they don't lead with closing questions, that's when I'm going to say the kind of things that we're talking about. When they say, yeah, well, I looked at the information and I have a few questions, and I might say, well, what are some of your questions, or how did it look to you? Kind of share with me kind of what's going on in your mind right now. It's I'm just real matter of fact in what I'm saying. And that's what you want to do. You want to get them to start talking to you and opening up, and then really listen to what they're saying, because you may be able to go straight into answering questions, which oftentimes might be addressing some misconceptions, which we handled in a different video, or they just may have a basic question, or that may be your time to get a laundry list of everything they need to know so they can make a decision. Because that's the goal here in the follow-up. The follow-up is to get everything they need to know so they can make a decision. Because when you get to the close, you want a decision. You don't want to be going on an endless email stream, an endless conversation stream for weeks while the person decides whether or not they want to do this.
Yeah, you don't want to get into that cycle. Why don't we do a quick role play? Because you kind of role played with me in the previous video about, in the connect, develop stage. Why don't we kind of pick up that same theme? Assumed you introduced me to your company, kind of connecting Rich Dad, Poor Dad, those concepts into there. And let's say I watched, a short recorded presentation about the company and the products. Okay.
And what type of personality type have I identified you as?
Why don't you
Well, I know what you are. Chris is a blue, primarily secondary red. He's actually the opposite to me. I'm red-blue, which is kind of funny. So, the first thing I'm going to do is, after small talk is over, I'm not going to say anything. I'm going to let this uncomfortable silence happen. And let's just say, uncomfortable silence starting now.
I had a couple of questions on that video, Jason. Well, actually, one thing I liked about it was seems like you guys are really into fitness and health, which is, that's something I'm really into. But I didn't quite understand how you make money in there. Like, I know you sell the product and you get other people sell the product, but like when it comes to dollars and cents, like, just what's the general idea of how much money I can make from this? Is this like something I can actually make a full-time income from? Does it take a while for me to build? Like, I'm kind of lost in that part.
Okay, I kind of you can tell me if I'm wrong here, but I almost feel like there's 2 or 3 questions in there, so I need to kind of figure out what you're really asking before I answer.
And promoters and blue personalities will do that to you, by the way.
Yeah, they're going to throw a lot of stuff at you because they tend to be disorganized in their thinking. Not to knock that, but it's just the way they are. So, first of all, yes, you can make a full-time income. Definitely. I'm doing that now. I have a lot of people in my organization who are doing that. But you said something like, okay, product is moving. People are... We're also bringing people in and teaching them to do that. I know you mentioned that, but you said the dollars and cents part. I don't quite know. I just don't want to assume I know what you're asking. What?
Well, I'll tell you this. I was in another company that I think it's kind of the same thing where the whole network marketing thing. And I remember the second month in there, I really started doing stuff. I busted my butt. I probably spent $100 in gas and hours of meetings and talking to people. And I sold a bunch of stuff and my check was $8, which I don't mind working towards something, but I'm sorry, there's no money in it.
Okay. So you're wondering on the amount of work and product moving, are you going to get paid some decent money?
Yeah, it's worth my time.
Okay, well, in my company, and again, these are all just hypothetical situations, just to clarify, and I'm not doing that to be evasive. I'm just trying to be like, generally, this is how it works. In our company, typically, if you have 20 customers spending about $100 a month, does that kind of give you a place to start? Like
on like the products?
On the products. Okay. Let's say, that's going to pay you $400 a month residual. Now, obviously, that's not that's not full-time living, but that's a place where I like to start people.
Well, that would pay for my stuff, wouldn't it?
Oh, it'd pay for your stuff and then some. You'd have a little bit of money on the side for, hopefully to reinvest in your business is what I would recommend. But the whole idea here is imagine having lots of people in your organization doing that. In other words, you could make a real good living by having a lot of people that are just selling product and maybe they only have like 20 customers. I guess what I'm saying to you is not everyone has to be a real big player. You could have an organization of a bunch of people that just want to get their product paid for and make a little money on the side, and you can make a real strong living with that.
And I don't need like hundreds of people having tons of customers themselves, because in the old company it seemed like you had to, it got really, with all the circles, and I don't understand all that stuff, but I mean, people had to have like hundreds and thousands of people to make any decent amount of money.
No, it's not. That's not how it works. Like in our company, I mean, and again, this is a hypothetical situation, but you can make a real strong 6-figure income with 400 customers. Now, you're not going to do 400 customers, but if you have a team of people that have 400 customers, so you take your customers plus what your organization's doing, that's not that far out there, right? I mean, for you, do you think 400 customers is a lot of people?
No.
So say 400 customers ordering about $100 a month, which is, I'm giving you about that's a pretty typical fair figure in my company. Okay. It could be more or less depending on the person, but you can make a real strong 6-figure income. I mean, is that the kind of money that would,
yeah,
that would be.
And 400 people is not.
It's not $8. It's not $8. Yeah. So I don't know. So what I'm doing here, and Chris can comment on his perspective of this conversation, good or bad. What I was trying to do is he threw a lot of stuff at me there. And the biggest mistake that people make at this point in the process is they assume what the person's asking and they start talking about a bunch of stuff. One of the biggest mistakes I see in the whole MLM industry is when people start talking dollars and cents, they break out the comp plan and they start showing them all this stuff. And notice he said later in the conversation, yeah, they have all these circles and things and I didn't understand it. I didn't hear that originally, but had I done that and hearing what we heard later on in the conversation, can you imagine how much I would have crashed and burned had I started doing that? He wasn't asking, what's your comp plan? He was asking for just give me a common sense, real world example of the kind of money I could make and kind of how do the dollars and cents work that way. But there was 4 or 5 questions that popped in my mind when he said dollars and cents, but I didn't want to assume I knew what he meant. Now you can go, well, what are those, Jasons? I don't need to tell you that, because what I need to know, what matters is what does he want to know? That's what I want to find out, what you want to know. And if I don't have the answer, I can get somebody on the phone that can answer his question. Hey, sometimes I don't. And, I'm a pretty big leader in my company, we're big leaders. Sometimes I call corporate and ask them, and, because if I don't know the answer, the point is getting to the meat of what he wants to know. And if you have any comment on how that conversation went, or maybe something that I haven't addressed.
A couple of things, actually. Well, I think we'll finish the role playing, man. Jason said something good there. He'll call corporate or call our company if he's not sure of something. If you're not sure of the answer to a question, don't lie. Don't answer on this. You just say, you know what, I'm not 100% sure on that. Let me check that out. I'll get back to you.
Yeah.
And people will appreciate the honesty. Then you can call your upline or go to the website or call the company and figure out the answer and just jot it down on a piece of paper and check it out. So don't lie, don't dance. A lot of times people don't know, and they kind of get diarrhea of the mouth and end up saying something that might not be entirely true. So be confident, saying I'm not entirely sure. Let me get that information. I'll call you back or I'll check on that. He did a really good job of doing those clarifying questions, and I purposely threw out kind of 2 or 3 things at once.
Yeah, you did.
Well, and
that was a doozy.
Well, and that's also because that's what happens. with the personality profiling. To explain that to you, that's what happened a lot of times with my group, the Blue Group. We just kind of were a little bit scattered brain and think different things at once. But a lot of times we're fast decision makers. I came in on a Wednesday and I signed up on a Sunday. That's 4 days, and it was the second phone conversation I signed up with someone I didn't even know. And it was a very similar conversation to what Jace and I are having now. So, it might make you dance a little bit, but the reward is worth it. And the other thing you were doing is he would answer some of my questions, then ask another question to either clarify, make sure I was kind of understanding what he was talking about or on the right track, or move on to kind of like the next, hey, you also said this, so what do you mean about that? So he didn't just answer the question and sat there and was silent. He asked the question, answered it, and then asked another question to keep the conversation moving.
Exactly, because you need to move them on to the next question, so you're moving them towards the close. And if you do that, ask question, answer question, ask question, and you keep doing that, eventually and then when you do that, silent, ask question, answer question, ask question, zip it, right? Eventually, the question that's going to come out of his mouth is, okay, well, what's next? What closing questions? And you move on to the closing step. That's good. Even how much does it cost? I do not know why people get so worked up about this question. They think it's an objection. That's not an objection. That's a closing question. I love it when people ask me how much it costs. It's awesome because they're already thinking about, okay, I want to do this. And if I do this, how much am I going to need to lay out to start this business?
Well, let's go back to the role play because I'm actually, it's bringing back memories as to what I did when I signed
up.
So
do you have so I asked, so does that answer your question on that? Like, you have any other questions?
My one other question from that video presentation, the Olympic athletes in there, how much money are they paid by the company, or what's the deal with that?
Everyone always asks me that. I understand, a lot of companies, our companies have kind of I'm going to be very direct with you and honest. In our company, it can be kind of good and bad because we actually refuse to pay people to take our products. It's good because it's really credible, because a lot of my customers will be like, okay, so you're telling me that they're taking it because they want to. And I'm like, yeah. The bad side of that, because I want to give you the good and bad, is the bad side of that is I think our product would be used by a lot more people out there if we paid them to. Does that make sense? Like, we could have so many, because it's that, obviously I'm going to be biased because it's my company, but I think it's that good that a lot more people would use it because of, we don't pay people. So in the end of the day, the people that take are taking it voluntarily. But really, the good and bad, it's really awesome because the people that do take it, and I think we have over like 600 athletes that take it, we all know that they do it voluntarily. They're not doing it because we're paying them to do it.
So really the product is that much different from what I can get at GNC.
Well,
that's what it looked like in the video.
I would definitely say that, yes. Yeah. And of course, so you can do your own research to back up what I'm about to say, but definitely. I don't think I would be making the money I'm making right now if it wasn't. Otherwise, people would just go to GNC.
So, how does all this work?
Like, when you say how's this all work, you mean like, what do you, I guess I don't know what you're asking.
Just, I'm interested. I like this. Like, it sounds good. Just like what do I do next?
Closing question. This is awesome. So once he asked that question, and notice, I knew that's what he was asking, but I didn't want to assume and jump to the close. I wanted to make sure, and this is a slippery slope. I'm going to tell you, when you're dealing with blues, sometimes reds, they like to get to the point, and you have to balance, because he could get annoyed that I'm always like clarifying because he just wants to get to it. But if you're quick, succinct, quick question, shut up, let him talk, you'll move through it. And as a blue, he wouldn't even notice that. The analyticals would appreciate that. The nurturers would appreciate that. But blues and reds, but still, with the running the risk of annoying a blue or red, I would rather ask the clarifying questions and not jump to the close too soon, because you could lose the prospect that way. Contacts don't like it when you move too quickly or do the wrong thing in the process. This doesn't mean it's the end of the world, particularly with blues and reds, because if anyone can handle a misstep, it's them.
Yeah.
But that simple extra question asked very quickly, would you agree? I clarified, okay, you're ready for the close. And then in the communication training, if you look in the close section, I actually give a script that I would say at that point. And that's one place where I believe you need to say exactly what we're saying, or at least make it mostly your own, because there's a method to our madness in there. Anything?
No, I can't think of anything else unless you want to give an example of the close. Otherwise, I think we're good.
Well, and I don't need to do that. I mean, it's in the communication training, and basically I'm doing just to jog your memory, I'm doing so what we'll need to do is I'll need to get your contact details, your name, your phone, your email. I'll need your shipping and billing address if it's not different. I'll need your social security number for tax purposes so my company can report your income. I'm doing that whole thing, and then I'm moving into what we're going to do to him once he gives me his credit card. Then I'll need a form of payment. In our company, we take any kind of credit card, and then, I need the expiration date, name in the card, all those things. I'm making it like it's not that big of a deal. And then I shift quickly from that into what we're going to do with him after he's in my organization. I'm going to talk about the training, what's next. And since everyone, if you're out in a company, everyone should have some training to talk about. If you don't have some training to talk about, then you have another problem. And the reason why I focus on training in the close is because I want to move them quickly off of the idea of they're about ready to buy something, and blues don't really usually have buyer's remorse, but, a green would. I'm going to do that because I want to move them right into, hey, this is where we're going. This is what you're getting. You're just not buying into some company. You're actually, you're getting your product set up, or your service if you're a service company, and then you're moving into this. This is what I'm showing them value already.
And actually, one thing I'll throw in there, this has nothing to do with our role play, but for probably usually the more yellow and green personalities as you close them, because a lot of times that will take, one or two follow-ups to do. And once you answer the person's questions and, they're not maybe in the closing stage, or they're kind of in that limbo area, you can say, what other information do you want to see so you can make a decision?
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's a very simple question. And just pause after that, and people will tell you, well, and this usually get more yellow and green personalities will say, well, this, and this. And what I'll do is I'll usually, kind of read back, okay, so I'll get you this, and this information. And so basically after I get you this or answer this, will you be ready to make a decision?
Yeah, that's a good point.
If they say yes, you say, great. Well, then I'll get you, if you can answer it right there on the phone or in the conversation, you do it. Or if it's stuff you need to send them to, you do that and set up a follow-up time. And if they say no, just say, okay, well, what other information then do you need to see? And you keep doing that until they say, yeah, once I see all that, I can make a decision. And if you never get to that point, then there's a misconception or an objection they have that you'll probably need to handle.
Or somebody that will just never make a decision. There's just some people that are like that, and you don't want to work with those people.
But that's a very simple, direct, easygoing way to ask the information. It takes the pressure off of you, and I guarantee most people will appreciate it. Actually, all personalities will appreciate it, because the blues will appreciate it because it's simple. They don't have to go through all this extra stuff. The reds, they can say, I need this, and this, get it to me, and let's talk next week. And then the yellows are like, oh, this person's listening to me, wants to help me. And the greens, the analyticals, can say, oh, good, I can get all these details and look at it in my own time and analyze all before I have to talk or do anything then.
Yeah, exactly. Do you have anything else?
No, that was my last thing.
Well, I think we pretty much covered it. Hopefully you understand how asking questions now fits into the post-introduce, follow-up, and close. And if you notice, both of these videos are not only how to ask questions, but they're a little bit of an elaboration and an extension of the original communication training. And that was done by design because we're feeding you a little bit at a time. And hopefully, as you watch these videos multiple times, which you may have to do, all of this is going to gel and it's going to make sense to you.